Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. With the new Battle Pass coming out, means that we get a new Warbond shop along with it, which is pretty nice, and the actual Warbond shop is looking alright. I wish they added a few more premium vehicles to it, but all of the other factors generally seem pretty good on it. Obviously, you still have 7 days if you want to get anything from this Warbond shop, including, obviously, any of the premiums. They're still available for 7 days, so make sure to have a think about what you want to get and all of that good stuff. When it comes to the new Warbond shop, there's a few changes and a few returns. Last Warbond shop, they actually removed the bushes, which was seen as a negative one, and it looks like they're going to go on rotation with these decorations that you can see here. So this box down here that you see is actually the bushes again. This is usually something that's definitely worth going for. So if you are a person looking to spend your Warbonds on something other than premiums, I would definitely say the bushes is the way to go when it comes to this stuff. So make sure to check that out. And then also, at the same time, they've changed some of the test drives, and also they've changed the premium vehicles. Everything else seems pretty much the same. So you've got the camouflage boxes, you've got the talisman boxes. I've got these two boxes every time over the last little bit, and it's been very much positive and also negative. So I've got some useless vehicles, I've got some really good vehicles. It really is just RNG on these ones, and it's a lot of Warbond shop it's a lot of points to throw away for stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the test drive vehicles and also all the other stuff. They also added in that Sleepy Time Gal decal, which is always really nice. The pinups they put in these Warbond shops are always fantastic. So starting off with the test drives, there are 4 of them. You have the Polar, which is of course the Zara class premium. I suppose if you want to grind through the Italian Blue Order tree, this isn't a bad pick. I don't know why you would want to do that, but this thing will just get donked on by battle cruisers and battleships. It's not a good vehicle. It's generally got weaker armor compared to a lot of other vehicles. The reload's not very good, and generally it's just a vehicle that is very bog standard really for the 5.7 area. Doesn't do anything special, just is the Zara class. And then you have the test drive for the TAM2 IP. The TAM2 IP is not a terrible vehicle. It's actually one which is quite good at 8.7. The thing is, for Germany, 9.0 really is the super strong lineup. So the 8.7 one is still very good. The TAM2 IP is still very good, but generally what you want to do is play that slightly above lineup. The TAM2 IP does have access to scouting, does have access to APFSDS, and then also it has the laser rangefinder and all of these other things. So it isn't a bad vehicle. It's just there are better ones at the BRs to play, right? And that is something that's quite important when it comes to something like this. But you can see the DM33 laser rangefinder combo is a really good combo, and also at the same time, with smoke and its mobility, overall it can work very, very well. But at 9.0, you have a much better lineup with the Leopard 185. You can also bring the M48 Super nowadays, and even the Puma. So it's very much a tough sell to play that 8.7 lineup just because you have such a strong 9.01 for Germany. But it will grind out a lot of the German tech tree very efficiently. Has got a very good reward on it. Remember, I'm running a 30% booster right now. And does mean that you can get the vast majority of the tree grinded with that one vehicle. And for test drives, for this, it's not terrible. The G91R4 is not the beast that it used to be, but it is still a very strong vehicle. It's very good in air realistic, it's very good in ground realistic. You just have to be a little bit more actually accurate with the vehicle itself instead of just spamming things all over the place. So it's one of those vehicles that goes really well with the TAM2 IP, since it is an 8.7. You get access to the AS-20s, you can get access to 4 of them, and you can also get access to 4 M9Bs with the 50 cals. So from an aerialistic point of view, it can work really well. From a ground realistic point of view, it can also work really well because of the Nords, and also has good rewards in the form of SL and also RP. A lot of people use this to grind through a lot of the German tech tree, and that's because it's just really good. So why not play it and go ahead? As I said, it did get nerfed a few times. Basically, they reduced the amount of guns on certain loadouts, and also at the same time they made Nords less effective, but they're still really good. You just have to aim. Before you didn't have to aim and you just shoot a button. Now you actually have to aim, so you'll be fine. Just aim. And then the next one is the G-Links for the British. So if you're interested in grinding through the British tech tree, I suppose you can get yourself the G-Links, maybe play a little bit of helicopter PvE with it, or maybe the 10-0 lineup of the ground forces for Britain, the Challenger Mark III and the Challenger Mark II and the Vickers Mark VII. Fantastic lineup, really, really fun lineup, definitely worth giving a go at if you haven't. And then the G-Links can grind out the whole tech tree for the British, and also at the same time it gets access to Hellfires, I believe. Yeah, it gets access to Hellfires, it gets access to ATASs, or the AIM-92s, the Stingers, and overall can be a very effective machine. It also has access to countermeasures as well, and thermals, so it's also pretty quick. So it's one of those vehicles that really can do a decent amount of damage and get out of there pretty quickly. So overall, I think it's a pretty nice vehicle. There are obviously better ones than it, but in stuff such as heli PvE or in ground forces, it can be incredibly useful. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of crazy stuff with the G-Links and be very effective with it, which is good. And then, when it comes to the next idea, if we go to the Warbond shop here, you have those 4 test drives. So if I was going to rank them, it would be number 1 is the G91R4, number 2 would be the G-Links, number 3 the TAM2IP, and number 4 is definitely the Polar. So that's pretty much where they rank, at least in my head. When we have a look at some other factors for it, the premiums are the only thing that's really changed. Everything else is very much the same. I wish they brought back the battle trophy box, but still I think this new system is better than the old one. So, premium-wise, a little bit disappointing. Overall, you have the lower tier ones. So you've got the MGB 75, the Key 43-2, the M3A3 First PTG. Then the higher ranking ones, you got the Ubari for the Japanese. You have the P47D22RE, and then also you have the T3457-1943 for the Soviets. So those are the 6 vehicles on offer. Generally a bit disappointed with these ones, especially since they have increased the amount of time for each Warbond shop. I feel like these ones should, be a little bit better. So starting off with the MGB 75, this is a British little PT boat that you can find at rank 2. So it's going to be good for researching rank 3, 2, and 1. And at 2.0, it does actually have a lineup. The Dark Adventurers, a pretty good vehicle, mainly because it has a 40 on the back. The Fairmile just gets eaten alive. And the Brantford, which is, of course, the Flower class. This one can actually be pretty fun, because it has a 102mm on the front of it, so you can just donk people, and you can hull break them or overpressure them, whatever it is in naval. It's pretty fun. But this vehicle is not really great. It has no survivability, no armor, it has 12 crew, and it has a 40mm on the front. So if you stay about 2 kilometers away from the enemy and you're accurate, you can do really well with it. But everything else on it is, not great. It has okay speed, not the best. It has extra armaments, which are not very good, in the form of Lewis guns, and also 220mm. Overall, this is just not a great vehicle, and it will get replaced really quickly once you get through rank 1 and go into rank 2 and definitely rank 3. Once you get past, even the Liscum or the Lysum, I would just take this one out of my lineup. So yeah, it's a vehicle with very limited use and limited survivability and all of that good stuff. So it would be a no from me on that one. The Key 43-2 is kind of in the same boat as it. It's the American one for the aviation side of things. It's at rank 2, so once again, can research rank 3, 2, and 1 really well. I feel like when we're talking about the American aviation tree, they have so many good planes now at pretty much all of their ranks. It's very hard to justify picking up a premium and skipping a bunch of them, because you can just kind of grind through the tech tree as you go. So for me, when I have a look at something like a Key 43-2, if you want to pick something like that up to be able to grind through everything, then you can, but at the same time, you're going to miss out on so many cool experiences when it comes to the tech tree. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue. So the Key 43-2 is one of the best turn fighters in the game, especially at its BR. It can just dance around the air as much as it wants to. It's one of the only vehicles that can actually outturn Spitfires and also outturn stuff like A6M2s. So it can be very, very, very good in that regard. The major issue with the Key 43-2 though is in other areas. So even though it has a pretty good climb and a pretty good turn, its actual overall maximum speed is not very good, and its dive is pretty rough as well. So you have to be able to jump on people who have who have already been engaged, or if they decide to engage you, and that would be a death sentence for them. The other thing is the actual guns on this are not great. So two 12.7mm Ho 103s, only 500 rounds of ammunition, not a lot going on in that regard. You're not going to be combat effective for too long, but with your superior maneuverability, it does mean that you can get near targets and then use as much of those 500 as possible. You don't have to shoot from long range or anything, you just have to dogfight and get in there. So if you really like dogfighting in Air Arcade or Air Realistic, this is not a bad plane, but in every other instance, it's not going to be that useful. There's going to be better stuff in the tech tree to use, especially for ground. So it's a bit of a tough pick, unless you are really into turn fighting in those things. You can also play this vehicle in the Japanese tech tree if you want to. There's the Key 43-2 and the Key 43-1 that you can see here, the Hayabusa. So you can give these a go and see how you feel about them, and then play it in the American tech tree, see how it is for you. And then the last of the lower tier vehicles is the M3A3 First PTG. This one is the Chinese M3A3. I think this is quite a nice little pick, and also at the same time it's part of the starter pack. So you can just pick this, I believe anyway, you can just pick this up on the Gaijin store if you want to, and you get a plane as well. But the First PTG M3A3 is actually pretty nice. It's an exact copy of the M3A3 Stuart that you see in the tech tree, and if you haven't played the Stuarts, they're incredibly fun. They have really good fire rates on their 37, they have a stabilizer, they have access to good gun depression, they have really good speed, they don't have a ton of armor, so that's a bit of an issue, but they do have access to scouting, and they do have access to some smoke grenades, as you can see here. So this vehicle generally in itself can get the shot off first because it has that beautiful vertical stab that a lot of American vehicles have. It can scout, so if you get up tiered, you can use it in a different way. It can flank because of its speed and mobility, and overall it can always be useful and can be used to, get into planes and stuff like that. So I think it's really good. It's a fantastic vehicle. It's easily the best out of the three lower tier ones, and it has a really good lineup around it too. With the the M3A3 and the M5A1, that's right here. You can throw in the Chiha Kai if you want, the CCKW for AA, even maybe the LVTA4. And then for planes, you've got the P40E1, which actually has the 500 and 2 100s, and also the SB2M if you want to just donk people. Same with like the DB3A, which actually has a 1,000-kilo bomb on it, which is quite fun at the lower tiers. But yeah, this is actually a really nice pick, I think. Out of the three, this would be my favored one. And just to show you how effective Stuarts can be in general, I can show you my stats for the US ones because I used to use them to grind out first places and stuff. You can see with the M5A1 that I have here, I have an 80% win rate with it. over 121 battles, and then I think I have my other one somewhere along here in this setup. But you can see how useful, you know, these things can be, just by the amount that you can, you know, run over people with. So yeah, it's just one of those vehicles which is very, very strong, and you know, can run really well. Here we go, the Stuart 5th CAD, so 78% with this one, and once again a really good KD. So the same thing can be said about the M3A3. So yeah, definitely a worthwhile vehicle in my opinion. Then we have a look at the other ones. So we have the Ubari. This is the Japanese cruiser, and it's part of a long line of Japanese cruisers which are not very good. So when we have a look at the Blue Water fleet for Japan, the destroyers are pretty nice, or some of them are at least, the ones which have the really nice torpedoes, such as the Yugamo. This will be a pretty nice vehicle. The Shimi is also very, very good. But when it comes to these cruisers that are around the place, like the Ubari, they're just weird. They don't have enough armament, they don't have enough armor, they're just kind of stuck in the middle of not really having anything that's amazing. So the Ubari has 2 dual-mounted 140s for its main armament, so it's massively outgunned by a bunch of other stuff that exists around this BR. It has one 120 on the front of it for some reason, and then it has a bunch of 25mm for AA support. Now, I've never, ever believed these 25mm are any good at AA support. Maybe if there's 100 of them on your machine, but I've just been killed by too many planes to think that these guns are good. They always open up way too late, and yes, I do have good crew skills on my guys, and they just put out a decent volume of fire but never do enough damage. So for me personally, when I have a look at the 25s, I just disregard them as guns. The next thing as well is the reload on the 140s is 6.2 rounds per minute, which isn't the best at this BR, and the first stage fire rate is 10 rounds per minute, as you can see. So yeah, 6-second reload overall, and that's not the best, but it's not the worst at least. But you only have 4 major guns which you can fire. If you get down tiered, of course, you can slap around a bunch of destroyers, but at the same time, this thing can see a lot of the wonderful destroyers of the American Army, or the American Navy, which will just annihilate you. You can get the Type 8 number 2 torpedoes, which aren't terrible, but they're not as good as Long Lancers. But you will get this torpedo mode to make them a little bit better. You do have a bunch of variations of rounds on your major guns, and also on the 120 you have some HETF if you ever want to use it. But generally, this vehicle is just not one to rely on, unfortunately. It's big, so that's where its survivability comes from, but that can also be a massive weakness, and its main firepower just isn't spread enough and doesn't do enough damage. So it's a cool machine, it looks nice, but it's just not a good one, and that can be said about pretty much all of these different cruisers for the Japanese. The Isuzu, the Kuma, the Kako, and the Sendai, they're all really rough as vehicles to play. They just don't fit the meta and haven't for a long time. The French get the P47D22RE. This is a good pickup, but it's kind of interesting to see it because, well, obviously, you know, the F6 is going to be in here as well, along with everything else. But the one thing that's nice about the P47D is it actually, for the French, does get bombs. So you can use it as a CAS in ground. This means that it can be a lot more effective than the F6C, because you can use it as a multi-role capability. So you get 2 1000s and 1 500, so the standard loadout for a P47D. And it is the Ridgeback P47, which is pretty cool. I'm really glad they added the Ridgeback P47s. They were missing from the game for a very long time, so really lovely to see that. But it's a very standard P47D, so a pretty powerful engine, very good firepower from the guns. In aerialistic, it takes a little bit of patience to be able to set it up and you know, go in and be not as aggressive as usual, and generally it works, you know, pretty well. So I would definitely say that I would generally say that it would be a decent idea, and I would be very happy with this pickup. And as I've said before, France for rank 1, 2, and 3, I really don't like as a tech tree for aviation. This whole line is just awful, apart from the VG33C. The D520 has seen its better days. The MB157 is fun, but it has a very limited ammo, so good luck carrying stuff. P63 can be fun, and the Hellcats can be fun, but everything else is just rough for the vehicle. Apart from the H75s, these are really good. But the P47D can get you past that and into the actually fun vehicles, aka the American vehicles and the VV10s of the French tech tree. And then you get to play a bunch of very mediocre jets, and then you get to play some very good jets. Yeah, the French tech tree isn't the best. But yeah, it's a very, very good pickup, the P47D. And then you got the T3457 1943. This is very similar to the standard T3457, which we have in the tech tree, which is why they're the same BR. The only difference is the turrets. So you can see this has the same turret or a similar turret to the 1942 T34 that you see here, whereas the T3457 in the standard tech tree is much more like the 1941 one. So that's the only real difference between them. So you can see here with it, it has that kind of, let's call it older style turret. And then when we have a look at the new one, which is this one, you have access to the, the later style turret. But this is a very good vehicle. The only issue with this is it gets at 4.7. And because of a lot of jumbling around of German vehicles, Germany has a really strong 5.3. And that means that quantitative matchmaking doesn't affect you when you get upted into that with a vehicle like this. So you're going to have to deal with a lot of Tigers, which is fine because you can pan the front of them, but Panthers is where the issue comes from. You either have to go for a cupola shot or go for the gun, and this 57mm isn't really great at breaking guns. It ricochets quite a lot. It does have some really nice penetration on the round though, on this one. The general, better penetrating round at angles is always nice. It does have access to APCR, which you should never use, and does get access to artillery support. But overall, being a rank 3 vehicle, you can use it for dailies, you can use it for specials, you can use it for all of that stuff, and you can use it for researching up until some higher echelons, which are pretty fun for the Soviets. I would say that 4.3 is a better BR to do that stuff in though, because you get the KV-1 ZIS-5, the Su-57, and then you can get your choice of donk vehicle, including the Su-85, which is really good at 4.3, but 4.7 also still works with the T-3457s and the KV-85. Like, it's not a bad lineup, it's just worse than the other ones, so that's pretty much that with it. So, good mobility, can't really go backwards though, pretty rough gun depression because it's quite tall. Armor can be trolley, but it's not the best, especially if you get uptiered. And the gun is satisfactory, but just not the best. So overall, I'd say a pretty decent vehicle compared to the other ones. So if I was going to rank all of these, I'll go number 1 would be the P47D22RE. Number 2 would be the M3A3 first PTG. Number 3 would be the T3457-43. Number 4 would be the Q43-2. Number 5 would be the MGB-75, and then the Ubari would be number 6. So that's where I kind of stand when it comes to these separate vehicles. As I said, I'd like to see more premium vehicles in this Warbond shop since we only get one every 3 months now, and also no battle trophy either. But hopefully you get through it, hopefully you have a bit of fun with this Warbond shop and you can get yourself some free stuff along with the battle pass. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Mega Dino King, Professor X1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R., Barine, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.